Okay, so for the opening remarks of this meeting, I would like to invite Ms. Lauren Wolfram, the Global Soil Partnership Secretary. That will be followed by Ms. Nora Veramuni, the NSL Deputy Director. So the floor is yours, Lauren.
Thank you, Carlos. And I will be very brief. I just wanted to use this opportunity to briefly introduce myself. So, dear colleagues, it's a great pleasure for me to have this opportunity to introduce myself, as I mentioned at this meeting, as I recently took on the role of the Secretary of the Global Soil Partnership. And I just wanted to share with you that my background lies, for instance, in a land-based natural resource management with additional expertise in restoration ecology. Thus, this experience has given me a deep appreciation of the critical role biodiversity plays, particularly soil biodiversity, in sustaining life on Earth. So, having said that, dear colleagues, I look forward to our future collaboration and I wish you a productive and successful meeting. And please, if you have any opinions or any discussions you want like to take up with us at the Secretariat, please feel free and anytime. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. Ms. Nora now.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, colleagues. Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning from depending on where you are connected from. It's really a great honor to join Dr. Brajesh Singh, Chair of the International Network on Soil Biodiversity, NETSOB, and my colleagues at the Global Soil Partnership Secretariat to welcome you warmly, to welcome you all to this fourth NETSOB annual meeting. While we are gathering today, FAO is hosting this week at its premises here in Rome the COP16 Part 2 of the Convention on Biological Diversity. So this reminds us that it was only a few years back at the historic event of the Convention on Biological Diversity, COP15, that soil biodiversity gained for the first time high attention as a precious global resource that needs to be preserved. So, and during this same COP15, the Global Soil Partnership, NETSOB, and partners all together launched the Global Soil Biodiversity Observatory, GLOSOB. Established in December 2021, NETSOB counts on all of you, the human talent, bringing the knowledge, the science, and the passion to advance soil biodiversity conservation and sustainable use all over the globe. So NETSOB doesn't intend to reinvent the playing field, but to be a platform for cooperation and a connecting bridge between all existing networks and efforts. One of the great challenges facing this network now is to understand the distribution and functional roles of soil biodiversity and provide information to help develop policy on restoring, on protecting soil health across countries and regions. And to address this challenge, the world needs GLOSOB to help assess and monitor soil biodiversity in a harmonized way across countries and regions. So, colleagues and friends, despite the clear importance of soil biodiversity for the provision of essential ecosystem services for life on Earth, its proper use and management is yet to be fully realized. There has been substantial progress in knowledge about the global distribution of soil biodiversity and its functions. However, so far, as you know, only around 1% of soil organisms have been identified, and soil biodiversity loss remains one of the main global threats in many regions in the world. So to raise awareness of this issue, World Soil Day 2024 celebrated last year under the theme Caring for Soils, Measure, Monitor, Manage, focused on soil data and information and reached millions of people around the world with over 5,000 world soil day related activities held worldwide and a massive media attention with 550 articles reaching over 3.8 billion people. So your task right now, my dear friends, as a network, is to help developing the Global Soil Biodiversity Observatory, the GLOSOB, as we have committed at the CBD COP15. This observatory will monitor and forecast the condition of soil biodiversity and will serve as a supporting framework to develop policies, promote sustainable soil practices, determine the economic value of soil biodiversity, and build national capacities for assessing soil biodiversity and soil health. For this global observatory to succeed, we need to set aside our different agendas and work together, think together, act together, and build together GLOSOB. So, colleagues, we have an ambitious agenda ahead of us these 2 days, including to review the progress of NETSOB working groups, activities, and agree on future work plans, taking advantage, of course, of synergies and opportunities for collaboration with all NETSOB and GSP partners. We will also be renewing the governance of this important network through the election of the new vice chairs. And this year, also, as part of the FAO's 80th anniversary, we will have the opportunity to celebrate soil solutions and showcase soil work results and achievements at the 13th plenary assembly of the Global Soil Partnerships of the Global Soil Partnership to be held in June 2025. So at the same plenary assembly, we will also have the opportunity to bring NETSOB outputs and priority works that need more support. So let's seize this fourth NETSOB annual meeting to review and discuss your contributions and priorities to feed the 13th Global Soil Partnership Plenary Assembly. And let's all remember our soils needs you. The world needs you to promote sustainable management and the adequate use of soil biodiversity. And to do so, we need to improve our knowledge of both. Together, we can reverse soil biodiversity loss to preserve healthy and productive soils. Together, we can improve food security, contribute to climate change mitigation and adaptation, and other sustainable development goals. So I wish you all a very productive meeting, and I thank you very, very much for your attention. Over to you, Carlos. Thank you.
Thanks, Nora. Thanks for the inspirational words, and thanks, Thorum. Welcome to the team. So up next, we have Dr. Brajesh Singh. Braj is the NETSOB chair, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about importance of biodiversity and how NETSOB is organized, its objective, and its goals. Up to you, Braj.
Unmute.
You're good.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And it is my privilege and honor to welcome you all at the fourth annual meeting of International Network on the Soil Biodiversity, and that is being held virtually. So thank you very much for finding times and attending this annual meeting. I also like to take this opportunity to welcome our new colleagues, the vice chairs, elected vice chairs that will be shared in a minute. So welcome all, and we look forward to working with not only with the new vice chair, but also with all the members of the NETSOBs and our partners. If I can go to the next slide. which seems to, there it goes. So one of the tasks I was given to talk today about the importance of the soil biodiversity to start this annual meetings. And this is what I'm going to talk today, the importance of soil biodiversity in soil, plant, and human health. Friends, we all know how important the soils are for the living planet. I always say in my classes that nothing, no life, terrestrial life, is possible without healthy and functioning soil biodiversity. Healthy soils is the foundations of the healthy societies and healthy planet. And this is because almost all planetary functions, so that's a primary productivity, biomass productions, nutrient cycling, water cycling, pollution removals, habitat for the biodiversity, soils play an essential role. So almost all planetary functions has a direct link with the healthy and functioning soils. From human point of view, not only the food, just remind ourselves that 95% of human calorie intake just still comes from the soil. But also other aspects we'll talk about that is the microbiome, the human microbiome, the pathogens that lives in the soils. It is a source of significant number of medicines that we use to manage our health, but it also home of some of the pathogen. So understanding their presence, their distributions, and how they interact with the global biodiversity is important to manage the risk and benefits from the soil biodiversity. So healthy soil is the foundations for the healthy societies and the healthy planet, and those because they provide the critical functions, and those functions of healthy soils are carried by the soil biota, the soil biodiversity. And why that's so important? Because the soil is the home of the more than 59% of global biodiversity lives in the soil. That's how important it is that as a habitat, majority of global biodiversity live in the soils. And because they have that number in terms of the diversity and numerical numbers, they carried out most of the ecosystem functions that is required for the living terrestrial life. It is quite interesting to know that the human society, since its civilizations, had known some form, in one or another forms, the importance of the soil biology, from the Mesopotamian civilizations to the civilizations we live in today. I will just take a couple of examples. If you look into this, some of the literature's names, Sindhu Valley civilization, Indus Valley civilizations, one of the oldest literatures in Indian literature is Rig Veda, which is almost written 1000 BC. They talk about soil biology. They talk about how soil biology is important for the fertility in terms of the food productions. When Cleopatra was the queen of the Egypt, that is almost 100 BC, so 69 to 30 BC, before Christ, the touching of the earthworm was punishable by death, because they thought if you touch the earthworm, you'll offend the goddess of fertility that will create less agricultural productivity, ultimately famine and war. So that's how the people, our civilizations have been aware of the importance of the soil biology, both in the food productions, but also overall health of the society. Some of the things I'm going to highlight today as we go to it, this is some of us other scientists, what I call the last decade, and the decade between 2015 and now, is the golden era of the data generations in the global soil biodiversity. Before that, almost non-existence information. Technology advances as well as the modeling approaches advances. And as a result, our understanding of the global distributions of many of soil biota, from bacteria, fungi, protists, earthworm, nematodes. So number of taxa or the phyla or where looked at how they are globally distributed, where are their hotspots, how they are going to respond to the future challenges, so for example, climate change and land use changes. And also that allows us to, some of us, this is one work that is led by the Carlos Guerra, where we look at the hotspots of soil biodiversity. And the findings of those were quite interesting in the sense that the soil biodiversity hotspots and plant biodiversity hotspots does not match at almost 40% of sites. And almost 70% of the global soil biodiversity are not protected under the current regime. So that tells you about how important it is to understand what are the global soil biodiversity hotspots and how we need to monitor them and why we need to conserve them for the future uses. I said that this is important for all sort of aspects. This is just one example. Again, last 10 years, as I said, has been golden era in this area, linking biodiversity, soil biodiversity with the functions. And if you look at that, that is ultimately the interactions between different phyla. For example, the bacteria or domain, bacteria, fungi, animals, earthworms, nematodes all together. This is an interaction between different diversity and their activities that ultimately influence the ecosystem service and functions they provide. Those are things have been quite well understood, at least theoretically. One of the things that has got relatively little attention, or is somehow less attention than others, the essential parts of its human health. Obviously, the human health is directly linked to the food and quality of food and the quantity of the food, but also the directly linked. Soil biodiversity contributes directly to the human beneficial microbiota that lives in our guts and our skins, our airways, and ultimately determines our health and well-beings. The soil microbial diversity and other biodiversity is a critical component of that beneficial organisms. But as I said, there is other angle to that. Soil is also home for a small but significant number of deadly pathogens, antibiotic resistance genes developments. And we need to understand where they are, how they are distributed, how they interact with the global biodiversity, ultimately to manage both the benefits, but where there is a risk as well. This is just one example, is that to look at, there is a soil fungus, aspergillus is called, it causes aspergillosis. It's in fact almost 2.1 million people every year, and its mortality rate is more than 85% in immunocompromised peoples, and almost 19% in the healthy population as well. So it's quite a serious disease if it occurs. It's a saprophytic fungi that lives in the soils, but in some cases becomes pathogenic and it causes disease. And what I'm trying to highlight here, that we need to understand where they are. And we had a COVID problem that killing millions of people. But a significant number of those millions of people that died is died by the mycorrhizas, which is caused by the simple soil fungus. Okay, so this tells you examples. It is important to know where these are, how they are distributed, but more importantly, how they interact with the general microbial diversity. One thing is emerging, that where you have a higher soil biodiversity, you have a lower load of pathogens, either the humans, animals, or the plants. I'll come to that in a minute. So that was of the human health sort of things. The other aspects, of course, is the plant pathogens or the plant diseases. If you look at the human, again, civilizations, there has not been a single era of human civilizations where disease, a plant disease, has not caused famine and war. All right. So this is some of the examples. The Irish famine in 1845 killed 1 million people, and other several millions has to immigrate. There's Bengal famine caused by another fungus in 1943 that kills almost 2 million people and billions has to move out. As recently as in 2010, the immigrations from the Latin America is caused by the fungus and disease in the coffee. So there, as I said, there's not a single era that fungal pathogens has not been an important factors. And climate change now, all the models predict under future climatic conditions, the abundance and the loads of these pathogens will increase. That will mean that we will lose more food produced through the disease or not if you not prepare for those aspects. And as I said, it's one of the critical aspects is that if you look at the emerging pathogen, across the different systems, the human systems, human body, animal body, plant body, and the soils, where you have a higher biodiversity, you have a lower pathogen loads. And simple reason is that the pathogens is competed out for the niche, for the food, for the habitats. So the higher biodiversity promotes healthier systems across different ecosystems. So I will go very quickly from here on that soil biodiversity, as I said, is essential for the survival of all forms of life on our planet Earth. It is because it is carries out almost all biogeochemical processes. It is the most diverse and most abundant group of organisms, soil biodiversity. It's also important to know that the most of those soil biodiversity is not characterized. All right, if you look at how much industrial product, medicines that comes from soil biodiversity, and most of them have not been characterized, you just can look at what are the genetic resource we have, and we need to protect that for the future generations for the human services. Despite central to the old ecosystem function and service soil biodiversity provides, it rarely appeared in the conservation discussions until very recently. And that's where I'm going to go with these slides. I'm not saying that it's the people have been working in this area for decades, if not centuries, about the importance of the soil biodiversity and how we need to know. From my own perspective, and my own knowledge, the real catalysis have started with the release of the Global Soil Biodiversity Atlas in 2016, which was 3 years in making, 2013 to 2016. That, in my opinion, has led to the more vigorous discussion about the academic community, but also the policy communities. That then led into the FAO and ITPS and CBD combined to commissions a report on the state of knowledge of soil biodiversity that ultimately underpins the COP15 decisions that was adopted in Montreal in 2022. Once it is adopted, action plans, how we going to monitor it, how we're going to implement it. UNNA delegated it to CBD. CBD, I'm sure we will hear today a lot about that. CBD then transferred some of this, or in partnership with FAO, particularly with NETSOB, look at the tools, how we're going to monitor, what we're going to monitor, and other activities, so the engagements, the training, the capacity buildings into the NETSOB. It is, in my opinion, it is a huge win for the policy perspective and the science perspective. But there's a lot of challenges that we will face. And you will see that through the presentation today and tomorrow, particularly in the lack of infrastructures and expertise in many countries and the technical aspects of that. You already heard about the GLOSOB, so I'm not going to go and talk about that any more the details than that, and you will hear more about GLOSOB as we go forward today. And so it is the framework that is being used to develop, so that to work with the local government and national governments to develop the monitoring, the measurement and monitoring frameworks. The moving forward, in my own opinion, is that what we need to have is developing a baseline database for the soil diversity at more granular scales than what we have today. Data storage and sharing in a policy relevant format of data will be critical aspects that we'll need to discuss and go forward as a community. Engagement and literacies for the awareness is critical, but those all over above three will require a significant resourcing and investments that we need to look into, that where those investments is coming, not just for this year, but year after years. And I do believe that we also need to strengthen the policy framework. At this moment, it's still volunteer requirements to provide the soil biodiversity there. But as we move forward, the strengthening this framework can be an essential part. And that is why it is essential that we work in the partnership. These are some of the organizations I just put. They have come together and working on this thing together, but there are many others. Ultimately, we need to work with the governments, NGOs, and many others organizations which can contribute to both the monitoring and the conservation policy of the soil biodiversity. I will finish up with my presentations with saying that the NETSOBs, I think you probably heard that as well, but I'll just repeat it. NETSOB needs to report to the plenary assembly in June, in coming June. So if you want to request member countries on information on any specific activities linked to the policy, I guess, obviously, then you should contact the NETSOB. I'm guessing that it will be Carlos Barreto, at least 30 days in advance. So those issues can be raised and discussed. And we will aim to feed you back about those discussions. With that, thank you very much for your time. And I look forward to very engaging and constructive discussion from here on. Thank you.
Thank you, Braj. Thank for this opening remark when it comes to NetSub. We have a few minutes before my talk, which is the next. So I would like to take the opportunity to invite everyone to turn their cameras on, please, if you're comfortable with that. So we can take a big screenshot of all of your faces so we can have that on record. We also post that on NetSub's website. So again, if you're not okay with that, please stay with your camera off. But if you are, that is the chance that we have. Natalia, can you do the screenshot, please?
Yes, I will just keep your best smile and cameras on for a few minutes so I can go through all the screens and make sure that you are all on the group photo.
Thank you.
The first one is done. Just give me 1 second.
And I'm glad to see more people have been joining us. We had quite a few people registered to the meeting, and the numbers are starting to reflect that.
Yeah, actually, we have over 500 registered participants into this meeting. Not all of them will be able to join, but as you know, we will, as already mentioned by Carlos, we will share the recording and all the presentations with you all, those who are here and those who will join, who couldn't join, sorry. So you have all the materials available. Just one more screen, because we are many. Okay. And there we go. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thanks, everyone. Feel free to turn your cameras back off, please. Okay, so next, I will talk about the NetSol priorities and contribution to the global soil biodiversity, biodiversity framework, and I'll start sharing my screen. Can anyone give me a heads up if you can?
Yes, perfect.
Thumbs up, thank you. Okay, so thanks, Braj, for introducing a little bit of NetSub. As I just said, my talk is going to focus on the NetSub priorities and how we've been trying to contribute to the global biodiversity framework. Okay, so before I jump into the actual talk per se, I just would like to update members on a few numbers. Right now, we are sitting at 1,150 members as of last night. It's 6:30 in the morning here. And those are from 140 countries. So we have a good representation. That's the majority of member countries. And we have Europe and Asia having most members. But when we look at the technical working group assignments, which is self-picked by members at the time of their enrollment to NetSub, we see that the vast majority of members, and here on the right side, are interested in working groups 1 and 2. Almost 100 members rather not be part of any technical groups, so they still are part of the network. They still get all the news sent to them, but they do not belong to any of the working groups by their choice. But we really need to focus on working group 3. We need more members here working on the economics and policies of soil biodiversity. Okay, so now to present you the contribution of NetSob to the Global Biodiversity Framework, I'm going to take a quick step back. Braj also started touching a little bit about this. The Convention on Biological Diversity is the United Nations international legal instrument to conserve biological diversity. And during the meeting COP15 that was held in Montreal in 2022, the Plan of Action 2020-2030 for the International Initiative for the Conservation and Sustainable Use of Soil Biodiversity was adopted. So this meant that CBD invited FAO through the Global Soil Partnership, or GSP, to implement a plan of action to conserve soil biodiversity through 49 activities. The NETSOB aims to implement them all. And this plan of action is structured around four major areas. The first being policy coherence and mainstreaming. So as soil loss and soil biodiversity loss is a cross-cutting issue, policies should be designed to integrate considerations in different contexts, including sustainable agriculture and other types and forest management as well. Number two, encouraging the use of sustainable soil management practices, that being through sustainable agriculture and other types of management, includes, for instance, addressing the direct and the indirect drivers of soil biodiversity loss. Third, awareness raising, sharing of knowledge, technology transfer, and capacity building and development. So basically, full and effective participation of and feedback from a broad range of stakeholders to improve information flow and cooperation to identify best practices. And lastly, research, monitoring, and assessment, meaning assessing and monitoring the status and the trends of soil biodiversity, of measures for the conservation, restoration, and sustainable use of soil biodiversity, and also identifying knowledge gaps. In fact, NETSOB was established in response to that action plan and as the outcome of the Global Symposium on Soil Biodiversity back in 2021. And it is a technical network part of the Global Soil Partnership. So there are other technical networks that are under GSP. And amongst the many recommendations on the execution of this plan of action, 4 of them are directly linked to the topics of our three technical working groups. And I'm going to cover them in the next few slides. So Technical Working Group 1 is responsible for measuring, assessing, and monitoring soil biodiversity. Technical Working Group 2 deals with the sustainable use and management and conservation of soil biodiversity. And Working Group 3 investigate this link between economics and policy to soil biodiversity. So together, these 3 working groups are in the intersection between science and policy. And here I bring several activities proposed in response to that plan of action, and they are organized by expected deadlines. So here we have the same figure on the top right, and this is working group number 1. So for instance, here, this working group is expected by 2027 to develop or identify soil biodiversity indicators, to work on building capacity on soil biodiversity assessments, to develop and harmonize SOPs that help member countries to collect and report on soil biodiversity. Starting next year, countries are expected to report on soil biodiversity to CBD on a voluntary basis, to help countries to identify sites to monitor biodiversity at different scales. As we all know, we can't sample full biodiversity across an entire country, so we have to help countries select benchmark sites, to work towards better soil data quality and availability. By 2030, we're also expected to have identified the cumulative impacts of multiple sectors on the quality of soil biodiversity. Regarding working group number 2, the practices, we are expected to work towards conserving, restoring, and managing soil biodiversity. And you will see the results of a survey on best practices tomorrow during the working group 2 talk by Jeff Battigelli. To promote conservation and integrate different types of knowledge when it comes to sustainable practices, and to develop a database of uses of soil biodiversity in bioremediation and restoration initiatives. By 2030, though, Working Group 2 is expected to work on the reduction of negative effects of fertilizers and pesticides on soil biodiversity, and that is in order to promote good agricultural practices, to continue highlighting the state of the world's soil biodiversity and to develop approaches that show that the contributions by soil biodiversity to both ecosystem functions and services. Now, working group 3 is a fusion of former working groups 3 and 4, and it deals with both economics and policy, hence more activities have been listed here. By 2027, we are expected to identify financial resources to implement this whole plan of action, develop protocols for valuing the economic benefits of soil biodiversity, to develop a reward scheme for farmers working on conservation and sustainable use of soil biodiversity, to engage with the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, to link soil biodiversity to One Health, to get civil groups involved in the implementation of the plan, and to make soil biodiversity part of the international agenda, making sure that it is included in both accounting and reporting systems. By 2030, we should work towards achieving sustainability and Paris Agreement goals through climate-smart agricultural practices, policies, and programs, ensure that at least 30% of areas of degraded soil are under effective restoration, and that is to enhance biodiversity, among others, and also work to ensure biodiversity-friendly practices are included in managed and agricultural areas. So one specific response to the CBD mandate that FAO received at COP15 is the creation of a soil biodiversity monitoring framework, which is called, in our case, the Global Soil Biodiversity Observatory, or GLOSOB for short. More details will be covered by Working Group 1 tomorrow at their talk. But just to finish my presentation, the goal of GLOSOB is to monitor and forecast soil biodiversity, becoming the global source of standardized reference data and information on soil biodiversity that is in the long term. So for that, GLOSOB will collaborate with partners to help build capacity in laboratories through the harmonization of SOPs, for example, guide member countries in measuring, monitoring, and reporting on soil biodiversity. Repeating, starting next year, member countries will voluntarily report on the status of soil biodiversity on their own land. So GLOSOB will help them in that process. Now, the figure on the right, the implementation of GLOSOB is based on 4 phases, starting with the implementation phase by defining the biodiversity variables that are to be measured and that are grouped in tiers that each country will measure, and they increase in complexity from tier 1 to tier 3. You'll be seeing more of that tomorrow as well. The second phase is planning, which involves, among others, signing agreements, training, building capacity, resource allocation. The execution, the third phase, it involves sample collection, data processing, and the last phase, the maintenance phase, that is once the observatory has been established and it's in the works, this is when the data will be analyzed, a database will be created, and data will be reported back to CBD, to parties, and to policymakers. With that, I would like to thank you for your time. Okay, I see some comments on soil erosion and on tea, soil biodiversity. I'm not sure what this message is about. Dr. Farid Mohammed, if you would like to write a little bit more on that. Lee, I see your question here. What about engaging at the national level? We do have more activities that have not been presented in that table. As I said, there are 49 activities. So thanks for bringing that up. Another comment from Lee. Great target to collaborate with the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. That is one, again, of the 49 activities that we have. And yes, it is hard it has been proven challenging to get soil indicators included in broader discussions. Even at the FAO, we see that when it comes to integrating people working on the biodiversity division with us, working on specifically on soil biodiversity. So that is something that we have been working on. I see Irene. For some reason, message from Irene comes with my name, but yes, the legal instruments are still in group working group number 3. As I said, working group number 3 is a fusion of number 3 and number 4. There are many overlaps in the interests of both groups. And as I showed on the map, we do not have as many people, even after lumping the 2 working groups. So Irene, if you have any suggestions on how to engage more people, I'll be happy to hear them. Saboka, the presentation, the recording for the presentation will be posted on the website in a few days. So this has been recorded now.
There is also a good question from Rudiger on how GLOSOB will promote knowledge on soil fauna. I think we can have a further discussion on GLOSOB, but I will share now on the chat the concept note, but you will see there that there are 3 tiers, as Carlos already explained, there are 3 tiers, and yeah, species data is part of the highest tier, I think. But yeah, this would be the goal of where we want to go, I would say. And then, yes, I see Andrea also have a key question on the alignment of indicators for certification and the collaboration with private initiative. Well, the Global Soil Partnership is open to governments, public entities, but also to private sector, following, of course, the FAO due diligence process, particularly for collaborating with private sector. FAO doesn't certify like that, but what we provide and what the GSP and NETSOB will provide is the whole knowledge base for this kind of certifying agencies that then can use FAO endorsed documents for establishing these certification mechanisms. But FAO does not certify as such. It's not a certifying agency as such. And yeah, I think more or less we can stop here and have these 5 minutes for grabbing some water and tea or coffee, whatever you want. And then we can come back in 5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, everyone. I would like to introduce Dr. Monica Farfan. Monica is going to talk on behalf of Soils for Europe, but also of Soil Dawn. And if you'd like to share your screen, please, Monica. Monica is the first partner of this morning. It's coming. Yes, you are good to go.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to be here today. My name is Monica Farfan, and I am speaking on behalf of 2 projects. I'm a co-coordinator for the Soil Bond Project, which many of you are familiar with. But I am also the science policy coordinator for a project called Soils for Europe, which is a project that is currently funded through the EU Soil Mission. And so I'm just going to go ahead and get started here. So Soil Bond remains committed to the monitoring of soils across the globe in protected and unprotected areas. And it is still a thematic bond through GeoBond. We have had a bit of a reboot in the last few years that I would like to go ahead and tell you about. But altogether, what remains is that Soil Bond has remained committed to partnerships and collaborations with these institutions and collaborating projects, including Soil Bond or including NETSOB and GLOSOB. We are in the process of working with the FAO on a standardized protocol for GLOSOB, and I believe that Carlos Nguera will be speaking about that tomorrow with George Brown. To give you just a little update on where we are as a project, we are now starting our second campaign. Our first campaign, well, and this one as well, does involve 50 countries. And the kits that we received back, or the sampling sites, were 519 over out of the 800 that we sent out. And so we think that this is actually a really great turnout. The thing I would like to emphasize here is that we are no longer accepting new sites for Soil Bond. This is already a massive, massive project with many moving parts, as you all, those of you who are soil providers know. That has to do with the global import and export of soils and all of the paperwork that goes with this. But we are, as I said, fully committed to continuing this project at least through 2030. One new development is that we have acquired funding through the German Science Foundation. And because of that, now we have two co-leaders, Carlos Guerra, as you know, who I believe works on the second work package, and now also Nico Eisenhower of the German Center for Integrative Biodiversity Research is also a co-lead on this project. This also means that we have now a proper team working on Soil Bond, including Felix Tse, who is our laboratory technician, Yuan Hong, who is now our data manager, and then Lise Touvenot and I, who are co-coordinating this project. So the reason I tell you about this is because I am, in particular, the person who is involved with communications, education, the upcoming newsletter, which we are going to begin having here pretty soon, social media, and also our Soil Bond summer schools. So I'm going to take a minute quickly to talk about these things. So the first summer school we envision is actually going to take place this year in Coimbra, Portugal. The success of this will help us determine what our next summer school will be. And it is our hope that we are able to have another summer school sometime around the 4th Global Soil Biodiversity Conference, which is, of course, held by the Global Soil Biodiversity Initiative, currently housed at Colorado State University, although this will probably change next year. This particular conference will take place in Victoria, Canada. But currently what we are having for our funding for these is the Erasmus BIP program, which is amazing. And on that note, I'm going to give a plug right now to the 4th Global Soil Biodiversity Conference, which is happening next April. I will push back a little bit on Dr. Singh's assessment of when soil biodiversity actually started being pushed into policy, and that is with the Global Soil Biodiversity Initiative, which was brought forth by a team including Diana Wall, Richard Bargett, Wim van der Putten, Ciro Gardi, and others. And so I think, you know, the continuation of the Global Soil Biodiversity Initiative is actually one of the things that strengthens SoilBon, but also GLOSOB and NETSOB. So on the topic of having communications, doing some community building within SoilBon, I would like to invite everyone to follow SoilBon on Blue Sky if you are on social media and have a Blue Sky account. It is our aspiration to be able to share stories of sampling of biodiversity research that's happening. And we would really like to do this account. So you can go to this QR code. I think, Carlos, if you wouldn't mind sharing the link to this on the chat, that would be great. The other thing I would like to do is for our current SoilBon soil providers, if you received a kit, you are one of our soil providers, is we are looking to populate our newsletter. And to do this, any field images, any images of your team, your site, we would love to include in our newsletter. And you can do that at this general email that goes to Lise and I, which is info@soilbon.org. Carlos, if you can also pop that one into the chat, that would be great. So I want to turn for a minute to another project that Carlos Guerra and I are working on. And this is a coordination and support action for the soil mission, which is, of course, funded through the EU Horizon. This is known by its acronym SOLO. So if you hear me say SOLO, I mean Soils for Europe. And the aim of SOLO is to support the soil mission through identifying key knowledge gaps within the 8 objectives of the soil mission. We have also added a think tank or a group of experts in the area to help identify knowledge gaps, barriers, and actions for the effective nature conservation of soil biodiversity, which I think everyone on this call is probably interested in. And our ultimate goal is to provide roadmaps to the EU to give research opportunities to fill these knowledge gaps. So to give you a little bit of a preview here of what you might see if you come to the Soils for Europe platform, which the link is on this slide. We have 9 think tanks. So these are groups of experts in research, industry, stakeholders such as growers, for instance, who are involved with these think tanks and are providing their expert knowledge. These roadmaps are also being developed through literature reviews, cross-fertilization of the think tanks. We meet twice a year as think tank leaders to discuss with each other, crossover. And also then we are developing one large roadmap in a co-creation methodology. So what I invite everyone on this call to do, so we are in year 3 of a 5-year project. We have currently our roadmaps for every one of these think tanks available for your review. We are looking for the public, meaning anyone kind of not involved with the project thus far. You could be a researcher, a person in industry, a grower. We invite you to come to this website. Carlos, if you wouldn't mind, I think the last link, if you would put it in the chat. This QR code takes you directly to the roadmaps. You create an account, and then you are able to review one or more of these roadmaps, which are available at least to the next 2 weeks, I believe. They should be there for at least the next 2 weeks. So please do that. After I get off of this presentation, I will put the link up again so that if you are interested in that, that would be great. To give you a little bit of a taste of what kinds of things we do as a think tank, I am part of the Nature Conservation of Soil Biodiversity think tank, and this involves a prioritization of these knowledge gaps so that we can tell the EU, here are the things that we think are the most important for you to fund. And for our think tank, we think that the need for the standardization of soil biodiversity monitoring methods is of highest importance. We also have a lack of knowledge on the economic valuation of soil biodiversity, although this has been touched upon. It is hard to convince the public to sometimes care about something when they can't see how it affects their pocketbook. And then finally, we have a lack of knowledge on the effective conservation and restoration methods for soil biodiversity. And this is because this is not a focus of conservation. Right now, these are our preliminary top 3. And we invite you to come to the Solo platform and to review our work. So with that, I would like to acknowledge the people who make all of these projects happen, and that is our soil bond soil providers who every campaign volunteer to sample. You are what makes soil bond great. The stakeholders, of course, of our think tanks and Solo, who volunteer their time, their efforts, and sometimes they come travel to talk to us. And then our funding sources. We acknowledge the German Science Foundation and IDIV, which is where I'm housed, as well as the EU Horizon project, or the EU Horizon funding source for the Soils for Europe project. And yeah, thank you very much. I think we have 5 minutes for questions. If you are all having questions, and I see that we have a number of questions in the chat. So
Thank you, Monica. Thank
yeah.
you. Yes, we do have some questions that people have been working on here, but most of the messages are links and comments. People liking the initiative both of the initiatives that you presented. So, um, someone saying, talking about representation from Southeast Asia, sorry. Is that something you have information on in terms of would you know by heart all the countries where you have
Yeah,
members?
um, we do have areas for sure where soil bond has a lack of samples. And Southeast Asia is one of those areas. We have definitely attempted some communication within both Southeast Asia, Africa, and also there are certain parts of South America. So basically, the global South. And we are at this time going to, if you have a specific area that yeah, we're at our limit at this point, I have to say. We have now sent out all of our kits for our second sampling, and it's, yeah, we're at the point where we need to continue the longitudinal studies of the sites that we have at this point already sampled. Yeah.
Thank you. Can I
Um,
suggest that people could follow up through that email instead?
you can, you can. I know that we are still in talks with a few researchers who we are having some paperwork issues with before we can get them started as soil providers. So it is not impossible, but we are very we are trying really just to get in places where we have not any soil providers yet. So yeah, I mean, it's tight at this point. But
Um,
yes,
um,
you
I
can
hear
go
you.
ahead and
Okay,
email us. Yeah.
thank you. Um, Time for another question. I see from Dr. Irene Hauser. She's asking if there's a think tank related to the legal instruments for soil biodiversity.
No, but part of our think tank's goals are to help develop some of these legal instruments, or at least give guidance for that. In particular, uh, it would be through nature conservation. So any regulations or policies that the EU could implement related to how to go about the conservation of soil biodiversity.
Okay, there is a last question, but if you could respond that in the chat to everyone, please, Monica, so we can move to the next talk,
Sure.
if that's okay. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Thanks, Monica, for your time and thanks for your presentation. Next, we have Dr. Lee Winowick from Kenya. She's speaking on behalf of Coalition of Action for Soil Health. Lee, if you are there, can you please share your screen? Oh, I see you. Thank you.
Great. Oh, great to be here. This is so fantastic. Just seeing how many engaged participants there are. Really shows that, soil health is on the agenda, and we have a huge community to draw from. So this is absolutely fantastic. So yes, I'm Lee Winowicki. I'm a soil scientist, and I have a couple different roles that I'll merge into one presentation today. I'm the global research leader of soil and land health at C4ECRAFT. So Monica, if you would like any engagement in the tropics, we are based in Nairobi and we have offices in 45 countries. So happy to have that. And also I am hoping to be part of working group 1, which is around monitoring. So I'm going to kind of weave in some monitoring here. I also co-founded with my partners the Coalition of Action for Soil Health, of which many of you on this call are part of. So I'll be talking about the role of multi-stakeholder collaboration. As one of the keynote speakers already mentioned, we know that 95% of our food is relies on soil. But what I am going to really try to talk about today is how we really need to broaden this scope. And I think that NETSOB and SoilBon, all of these, really focusing on soil biodiversity are doing this, really getting people to think beyond soil fertility and recognize the multiple ecosystem services that healthy soil provides. And I'll talk a bit about our engagement in UNFCCC, UNCCD, and we also the UN Decade. So that was my question, Carlos, about UN Decade on ecosystem restoration. And we like to use this definition of healthy soil, and actually the coalition monitoring group just came up with a even more comprehensive one. But just recognizing that healthy soil is the ability to sustain productivity, but also the diversity and the environmental services. And I think that this is central to what NETSOB is trying to do. And we all know that we're in this crisis, right? So we have massive degradation. 65% of agricultural land in Africa is degraded. There's the IPBES says that, soil degradation negatively impacts 3.2 billion people. So really, we all need to collectively come together because business as usual is not an option. And today I'm going to talk about some of the advancements in monitoring. And if we really want to be informing policy at the national, local, or international level, we really need that data. And I'm really glad that NETSOB has put evidence and data generation central. And today I'll talk about how we can, need to use these data to prioritize interventions, but also track the impact. And this is a photo of Eastern Kenya, and just talking about how landscapes are diverse. So any monitoring method that we employ really needs to capture that variability. So I wasn't sure in SoilBon how many samples are being collected, but one of the four of the pillars of the C4E craft theme is to really generate this science and evidence using innovation. So I'll talk about some innovation around eDNA, around soil spectroscopy, remote sensing, to really generate this evidence and leverage it for policy and scaling. So we do a lot on capacity development, and really, if over a third of the Earth's surface is degraded, we can't just do interventions on one farm or a demo plot. We need to scale to hundreds of thousands of hectares. And one of the tools that I'll talk about today is the Land Degradation Surveillance Framework. This is starts in the field-based methodology to develop biophysical baselines at the plot and landscape level, and also to track changes over time. So I use this photo just to show we have people augering, we're doing infiltration, we're looking at vegetation. In the old days, at least how I was trained, you would go to the field and just collect, your data from your soil pedon. But now we realize that we need to be collecting other environmental variables. And this is a really cool network. So for SoilBon people, these are where all of our sites are. We have over 250 sites, and each site is 100 square kilometers across the tropics. And you can see we've recently expanded into Sri Lanka, and we're expanding the network in India. And why is a consistent method so important? It enables the statistical comparison, so we can also produce accurate predictive maps of soil properties, and we can really start answering those key questions about the impact of land management on these different ecosystem services. So over 250 sites, I think, 50 donors, all have contributed to this, many partners. And just a little bit on the method. So traditionally, the sites are 10 kilometers by 10 kilometers with 16 clusters. So we sampled 10 plots per cluster. Right now, we're doing a lot of MRV work for several carbon market projects, and we're actually stratifying based on management zones, so keeping the clusters and then stratifying it. So everything happens at the plot level. We've actually influenced Vera VM0042 and now the new methodology, making sure that all samples are composite samples, and every sample represents 1,000 meters squared. On the right are some of the indicators that we also look at. So that looks at land use, erosion prevalence. So I saw a question in the chat. Yes, we've produced global maps of soil erosion, and they're all free on our website. Every year we update it. Soil water conservation. Of course, we look at multiple soil health indicators, including earthworms, arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi spores, and of course, carbon. And then we really are looking at above ground biodiversity as well, so trees, shrubs, grasses, because we know that there is a link between above ground and below ground biodiversity, as one of the previous speakers also mentioned. And the cool thing about this method is that we can apply it systematically across various land uses. So here's a photo of the Chawia forest in the Taita Taveta Hills, an endemic forest that has some encroachment of agriculture where we also sample, as well as going across the landscape down into the rangelands. So we really are encouraging this landscape approach and recognizing that these land uses are all connected. So what may be a water tower or a carbon tower influences what is down below into the rangelands. Now, how can we possibly take so many soil samples? Because it's so expensive, right? Well, we are constantly innovating. So here is a cool spectra of the mid-infrared spectrum of about 2,000 soil samples here. And we say that spectra is like the fingerprint of the soil. So with this spectra, we can calibrate it using massive archive. So we have over 200,000 georeferenced soil samples in our Nairobi archive. We are also the gold standard lab for FAO GLOSOB, and I've been on the steering committee for GLOSOB, so the GLOSOB like spectral group. And we know that this works really well for elements, carbon, nitrogen, and we're starting to explore if there's any way we can use spectroscopy to also look at some biological signals. We also, in our lab here in Nairobi, we look at, led by Lucrecia Mwangi, arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi spores. We look at these, the size, the amounts. We're also exploring with the SPUN network. So Lucrecia won a small grant. So we've actually, in those same landscapes that I just showed, took soil samples. We do the eDNA extractions here in Nairobi, and then we send the samples to the US for the eDNA analysis. And if for those of you, there's some really cool videos on mycorrhizal fungi on the SPUN website. So some results and some action. So how can we make these data actionable? This is one of our staff, Patricia Masakati, showing a map of land cover to the National Agricultural Research Institute in Zambia. So we don't want these data just sitting in our computers. We want to get them out. We want more people looking at it. And we want to understand, for example, what's the potential for soil organic carbon sequestration in rangelands in East Africa? So to do that, the first step is we're looking at comparing soil organic carbon content across these multiple LDSF sites in East Africa. So each site here on the left is 100 square kilometers with 160 topsoil, 160 subsoil samples, 0 to 20, 20 to 50. And what you can see here is that the box plots that we see that sites with higher carbon also have bigger box plots, so bigger variation. This is very interesting. We also see like the site in Balambala that has lower carbon, we also see lower variation. And this is something that the data is teaching us, that these sites that are at the threshold, critical thresholds of degradation have less variability. And so it's really important that we're designing interventions that we, are doing context specific. We're also doing some cool studies. So if there's some people from the US, I'm from the US, but I live in Kenya. There was a really cool paper linking above ground grass biodiversity and soil organic carbon. And big surprise, I do a lot of rangeland restoration and work with a lot of partners. We're always, the notion is we need to plant the big biomass grasses, perennial grasses, and that will improve soil carbon. But what we're seeing now with the data is actually it's more about diversity in the rooting architecture. So having a diversity of grasses may also increase soil carbon. So really changing the norms with data. So here I'm showing some cool grass species diversity in an LDSF site, and also some density plots of soil organic carbon. I love grasses. Anyone here is interested in grass biodiversity and looking at above ground, below ground biodiversity, please reach out to us. The other thing we're doing, as I said, is doing quite a lot of biophysical monitoring for carbon projects. All the nasty articles that came out about carbon projects, a lot of the complaints were that there wasn't a robust monitoring methodology. So that's awakened a lot of projects. So we're doing quite a lot of soil baselining and looking at methodological deviations. This is an example of 36 LDSF clusters across northern Tanzania, and we produce this very bright yellow map, but that's because it's very low carbon, and we keep all of our soil carbon maps to the same legend and scale. We also have been proving really interesting carbon-14 data, looking at using this LDSF data set that we have, finding out that we have carbon stays around a long time in the topsoil, especially in the drylands, about 400 years, and 1,000 years in the subsoil 20 to 50. So when we talk about carbon potential, sequestration, monitoring, we actually are seeing that we can hold onto carbon for quite a long time. So this is a cool paper. And then in India, and now we're doing this in all of our sites, looking at impact of land management on the presence of arbuscular mycorrhizal spores. So this is an example on the left of box plots again, 4 sites in India, Andhra Pradesh, and where they were practicing zero budget, now called Andhra Pradesh Community Natural Farming, and where they didn't. And we're seeing in some sites higher spore count where there was this natural farming. We also saw higher earthworms. And it's really interesting because if anyone knows Andhra Pradesh, it was the highest fertilizer use of any state in India. And now they're converting to natural farming. So really this need for, making sure we have some life left in the soil to be able to, sustain productivity. So everyone's here. We know soil is moving up on the global agenda, but as Honorable Penelope Wensley says, it's not nearly enough. We have a lot more to do. And so I want to talk about the importance of these multi-stakeholder coalitions, such as the Coalition of Action for Soil Health. The main goal is to improve soil health globally by addressing implementation, monitoring, policy, and investment barriers. And we have 4 targets. For those of you who don't know, we were launched in the UN Food System Summit because, if you can believe it, we almost had a UN Food System Summit that did not have an action or coalition on soil. We did not let that happen. In Action Track 3, led by WWF and UNCCD, Dr. Lal and I came together and really brought stakeholders together to make sure we have this coalition. But guess what? That was 4 years ago. Now we have over 250 members and continue to grow. Members of the coalition can participate in global events, policy advocacy. We have working groups. The monitoring group just put out a new definition of soil health and a platform on the role of soil monitoring. The policy group has been absolutely amazing in terms of linking with, governments that have soil health policies and those who don't. So I can put this all in the link that if you want to join CASH, please do. We have this amazing annual report, and I'm highlighting it from 2023 because we're about to come out with our 2024 annual report, which highlights new youth initiatives. #Youth for Soil. And we also have a mentorship initiative where we have over 200 mentees who are youth from across the globe who are looking to partner with someone who can mentor them, provide opportunities. And we also have this youth initiative for scaling soil health. And this is really, really exciting. We have just amazing engagement with youth. Next week, the youth are doing this We Grow, We Eat. I'll put all of this in the chat. So this will all led by youth. I will attend as a participant. So I encourage anyone who's excited to engage with the next generation of soil scientists. And also, I am just in my last 2 slides. We are really engaging here in international and continental initiatives. For those of you based in Africa, there's the Africa Fertilizer and Soil Health Action Plan. we, through advocacy, made sure soil health was there. It used to be called the Africa Fertilizer Summit in 2006, Abuja Summit. And so we're making some progress. And now there's a lot of momentum around soil information systems. So we worked with NEPAD, the African Union Development Agency, who's basically the technical arm of implementing the summit. We've just produced this last month. Policy briefs and guidance notes on advancing Africa's soil health monitoring and to support continental initiatives. So I think it'd be great if also in Working Group 3, Carlos, that we could do some of this work at different continental levels. At the national level, we worked with 6 countries to see how to include soil health into the NDCs, the nationally determined contributions. Countries are updating and have already done their new update, and we're hoping more will have soil health in there. That's why I asked about the NBSAPs, and a lot in rangelands. And then finally, my last slides, we have had record engagement at UNCCD with over 70 partners, highlighting soil health monitoring at the UN Convention to Combat Desertification. I see Irene is here. We've also done a lot with her and at UNFCCC COP29, and for 3 years in a row, CASH has supported the Action on Food Hub, making sure soil health has a full day, and we have also been hosting soil health dinners and receptions. So I think yes, the Biodiversity Convention is great. Let's look at how we can, put soil health at the center of all 3 conventions. So finally, we have the tools to track soil health. We can use on-the-ground observations with Earth observation as well as citizen science, and that there's this real need for public and private sector engagement to really scale healthy soil practices globally. And with that, thank you so much for the opportunity to present. Over to you, Carlos.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lee. There has been many, many messages talking about how interested people are and how impressed they are by everything that you presented. We have just 2 minutes, so there is one question from Elena. Are you somehow in contact with the African Regional Soil Partnership?
Yes, C4E Craft based in Nairobi, but if there's someone, a contact that Elena would like to give us, please share the contact.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So I see Daniela is helping you putting out links for the forums in here.
Great. Thanks, Daniela. She's amazing. She's the coordinator of CASH. Wouldn't be anything without her.
Okay. I don't see any question per se here, just more people saying that they are interested and that they will contact you either through email or through the forum. And with that, I would like to thank you again, Lee, and I hope I can see you tomorrow at the discussion of the working groups. Thank you. Okay, that was a great talk. Next, we have Dr. Paolo Di Leonardo from speaking on behalf of Soil Health Benchmarks in the Netherlands. Paolo, if you are around, I see you.
Yeah. Hi.
If
Hi,
you can
everyone.
please share your screen.
Yes.
And meanwhile, Lee, feel free to answer the questions in the chat too.
Can you see my screen in a presentation mode?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect.
Thanks, Paolo.
Thank you. Thank you for giving this opportunity to present the project benchmarks, and it fits quite well also with the previous presentation. Indeed, in the next 10-15 minutes, I will show how also we plan to develop the project and monitoring soil health. And for that, indeed, I would like to start with definition of soil health. And there are many as the one written here, it's for scientists from a scientific point of view, but also we have like more one, a policy one, a bit shorter as the physical, chemical, and biological condition of the soil, determining its capacity to function as a living system to provide ecosystem services, and also to assess how multifunctionality can provide soil health. And in this picture, actually, this picture represents very well and summarizes very well what we do in benchmarks and how we intend to monitor soil health. We work in different land use systems, as a urban system, forest in the agricultural system. We have different scales also into account. We take into account as a bottom-up approach. So we started at the local level, but then we are moving on to landscape and regional level, as well as we take into account different type of stakeholders, because we want to understand the needs of different people, and also the monitoring campaign, monitoring soil health also depends on the request and what the needs are for a land manager, national legislators, European legislators, and value chain businesses. And for that also we need to collect different types of data to really to have a full and comprehensive understanding of the system. And we have more classical type of data sets, like the one that we refer to as samples, that are more a lab measurement, lab-based tests, and so on. We have the one we refer as space, and we take into account remote and proximal sensors, but as well as spectroscopy, something that was mentioned also in the previous presentation. But we also want to use big data sets, either existing or the one that we are going to build. And this will give us the possibility also to make some modeling, to make some prediction and then maps and so on. So to start with, as I mentioned before, also soil health can be considered as the definition of the providing soil health provides two or more different types of soil functions, but we wanted to describe and understand these soil functions. And that's why we developed this cognitive model, so to understand, to underpin what are the processes that are bundled together to define specific soil functions. This work has started a few years ago, and in the publication referring to it is Creamer and colleagues published in 2022 in Soil Biology and Biochemistry, where Soil Biology group, together with some experts that actually are also present in this meeting, as the Lynn, for example, before, we really discuss which type of actors, biological actors, different biotal community, plays a big role in processes that can be bundled together that can define different cell functions. And in this schema that you see in this picture, you can see, for example, on the left-hand side, a cell function that is divided in sub-functions, can be one or multiple sub-functions. Each sub-functions, therefore, is then linked to different processes, and processes that then link to different parameters. And this can be biological, chemical, physical, and environmental. And also these interact in a different way. Important things and step forward what we did in benchmarks compared to the previous paper is that we started to place also different type of management practices, intervention that can affect either at process level or the function level, but also different type of indicators that place in different parts of this cognitive model can also measure and assess either a process or a parameters and ideally in function. So having said that, this definition of cognitive models was done for 4 cell functions so far: water regulation and purification, nutrient cycling, habitat provision, and carbon and climate regulation. And we took all these 4 because we think that this underline then one of the soil function that is for a primary production, sustainable primary production. But we really focus on these other 4. And as I mentioned, so we really split them in sub-functions, processes, and so on. So we have 4 cell functions. In total, we have identified 12 sub-functions and 53 cell processes. And for each of them, we really linked the type of actors, the type of biota linked to the different processes. And this will help us also understanding what is connected with who, and what, if you remove something, also what this will mean for the development or the monitoring of that function or that process. But yet, this is just a thermal skin. And of course, we had to take into consideration not everywhere and everything is the same. We had to really take into account the context we are referring to. First of all, the stakeholders, so who we are talking to, who is in this monitoring campaign. The pedoclimatic zone comes after, so where we are, and then the type of land use, because this also will imply the use of different indicators, also having different processes and different functions and so on. And yet, as I mentioned before, also the importance of practices. And after this definition, or in parallel with the definition of cell functions, in the project, we also started to have we made a comprehensive list of different management practices for the different land use types. So A stands for AMP, arable management practices, forest management practices, and urban management practices. And then we ran a meta-analysis. We did some statistics to really see. In this case, only we show the soil biota because of the relevance for this meeting, but we also work on this meta-analysis and this analysis also on physical and chemical parameters to see how management practices affect the biological parameters, chemical and physical. And we could highlight, for example, which are the best practices that have a positive outcome, here in this case highlighted in green, or neutral or a negative effect. As well, we could highlight which are the management practices that actually are not studied or they don't show effect because there's a lack of knowledge. And this also can indicate where the research should go or where we should focus because knowledge is missing. And this is the result of this paper hopefully will be published soon. They were submitted in Cell Biology and Biochemistry at the end of last year. So once we have defined also the soil functions, the practices, it's important also to understand which type of indicators and how to measure these practices if they have an effect on soil health, if you're going in the right directions. And in this case comes handy a recent publication published last year by Strefel and colleagues, also by one of the authors is Rachel Creamer, where they define different types of indicators and they refer to result and outcome indicators. They talk about these type of indicators because, of course, not every time along a transition phase or after an intervention, you can use the same type of indicators. And for result indicator, indeed, they refer to these indicators can be used to assess a trend in a change. After an intervention, after you define a goal, a target, after you start a practice, then in a midterm, you can evaluate if this intervention is going in which direction. Hopefully in the one that you wanted to, but then maybe you can also assess that can go somewhere else. While an outcome indicator is the one that assess the at the end, if we really to assess if you reach your target. So it's really a long-term evaluation. If you see in the picture here, and we take as an example this a nutrient management plan, we can consider a result-based indicator, a change in the use in fertilizer. For example, switching from chemical fertilizer to maybe more like intervention like cover crops. While an outcome indicator can be the change in water quality, really assessing in a long term how water is, the quality has improved, hopefully. But this will only verify in a longer term. You don't know it immediately. And it's important to have this different set of indicators along the way. It's not only one exclude the other, but really use them together to understand what's happening. So this is the general, so far I explained a bit what is the general framework of benchmarks, how it works. In the next couple of slides, I will go briefly to how they look like, these cognitive models, and how also some, an example how this framework of different indicators can be applied in a specific context. So here we have the function model for habitat provision for biodiversity. As I mentioned before, we then define, we have one function, three different functions like spatial availability, complexity, habitat sustainability and stability, and biotic interaction. Next to that, we are linked to different processes, and each process then is linked, when possible, to a specific parameter. Parameters are then divided also in biological, in a chemical, physical, environmental, and also in this case are color coding in green for biological, red for physical, yellow chemical, and blue, gray in for the environmental one. And we have done this with the full consortium, with a team of experts for each soil functions, where we met in person first and then online, where they really discussed as a knowledge base, expert knowledge, how really to link different things, how even to give a weight, because not every parameter is always the same important for a specific process and so on. And we have done this for habitat provision and biodiversity, for the carbon and climate, carbon and climate regulation, and again, like subfunction processes and parameters, nutrient cycling, and water regulation and filtration. And this is hopefully being also published very soon. We have submitted now for a book chapter on soil health, and we hope this can be shared. It's going to be open access, and this modus operandi can be shared with a wider audience. And then one of the last slides that I have, it's how the framework to monitor works. First of all, we have to define the objective, what we want to do, and also the context. So in this case, we are in an almond production in southern Spain, so very specific sites, very low rain during the year, very limited also amount of irrigation that you want to do. We define the objective, in this case, referring to habitat provision, is improve habitat diversity and the habitat stability. Then we also, after this interview, we talk with the land manager to understand the type of practices they have and also the one that could apply to reach their goal, to reach objective. And after that, we define the results. So which type of indicators you can use to have a midterm evaluation of the practices you have to reach your objective. And then in the longer term, the outcome. So the type of indicators that you can use depending on this context to check if the objectives are reached. And we are trying to do this taking into consideration our case studies in benchmarks that are 29 spread in different land use type and spread across Europe. Also to really have a variety of different pedoclimatic zone and also to understand exactly how these things can change. Because as you can imagine, almond production in Spain might be very different in terms of monitoring campaigns for soil health to a forest system in Finland or in Norway. So really we have to contextualize and understand what's happening. Similar approach can be done for another parameters, not habitat provision, but more than parameters, another objective. In this case, is soil organic matter, so how to improve soil organic carbon in the field and so on. So this is the very last slide, just to sum it up, our framework, how it works. So first of all, we think you really have to define the setting. So your goal, who are you going to work with, who is it for, and the context where you are. Then you can select the different types of indicators, and one doesn't exclude the others, but you have to think in these types of categories. So practice indicators, based indicator, result, and outcome-based indicators. And then you have the different types of measurement. Of course, not only one measurement, but should be also a combination of them. And hopefully this will really give you an idea or really can support your monitoring campaign. And with this, I would like to thank the whole consortium of benchmarks. This work cannot be done, of course, only one person. I'm only presenting here and I only put my name, but of course, it's a full spectrum of expertise that are behind these models and this work. And collected representatives from different partners. We are 28 spread across Europe. And as last, I would like to thank you all for the opportunity to present benchmarks. And I'm happy to take some questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Paolo. This all sounds like a very ambitious, but at the same time, very important project. I would speak on behalf of everyone in all the comments that we commend you for being involved in that project. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. But meanwhile, there is one question for you, Paolo.
Yeah.
How can this model be scaled out to increase its uptake and use in terms of capacity building? If you could comment on that, please.
Scale in terms of physical scale, like from field scale to landscape, for example, or
Maybe the person who asked the question can come out, please, and clarify the question.
So we are now, so as I said, to answer the first part, let's say, we are scaling up at this moment. Like we, at least we are trying to understand how these things can be scaled up from a field level to landscape level. And we have some ideas, but we're still like in a phase of discussion because you have this bottom-up approach. So for example, our field campaign for the last year was really focused on the local scale. Year one of this year, we are scaling up, also changing a few things, making it a bit more relevant on the landscape level. And this will also will help understanding how this framework can be also used for a larger level. Most important is to see that the objectives, of course, are different. So if you are at the monitoring level at the field scale, maybe it's really at the farm system, for example, that you have to think of, like which type of crops we are going to grow. On the landscape level, it's more like on the larger management point of view. How, for example, advisor on a larger scale can see in that specific area, maybe if you consider like precipitation, which type of practices you can apply, but more on larger scale. And this, of course, the question is different And then fourth, also the type of indicators that you will use or practice you will use are different. And if you want to explore, then we would like to involve, of course, more people and try to apply this also with different stakeholders. And that's why we had so far in 2023, but these are associated to our case studies workshops with different stakeholders. But we will have in 2026 a second round of stakeholders workshops where we really ask again what their needs are. And we can think also how we can scale up at the landscape level.
Is that second round publicly available? Would that be made available for
usually
people
there
to
are
join?
usually are public available.
Mhm.
We decided with the first round in 2023 to have smaller groups between 30 and 50 people because we collected data, and this data are also available in deliverable, and we are working on publications. Because we asked three main questions: which soil functions were most interesting for them, for the different type of stakeholders, which challenges they face the most, depending on the different regions, and also how projects like benchmarks for this type of initiatives can help them, and they can help us. And of course, working with smaller scale, a smaller group of people, this was feasible to do that. But we do have of course, we do understand that to scale up, we need to involve more people. So there will be some being done to increase. But I don't know yet the format.
Mm-hmm. And for people interested, do you have any preferred form of contact? Is there a website
Yeah,
that?
the website, but most via email. Our LinkedIn page is quite active. But if you can contact me, I can also put you in contact with the person, with the work package leader that we can create also a database, and is also the one work package leader one. Fabio Volkmann is the person responsible for the stakeholder engagement. And also in collaboration with the work package 5 that is on the MRV. So also we are taking into account how this monitoring can be applied to value chains, and it can be done also at different scales. So from local to regional to European. And also in the case we need stakeholders to understand what they want and what they want to, how they perceive soil health. So if they contact me, for sure we'll answer, and we can put you in contact with the relevant person in the project.
Okay, sounds good. Does anyone have any other questions? We have 2 minutes left for Paolo's time. Okay, I've added in the chat both Paolo's email and the
Thank
Soil
you.
Health Benchmarks website. So please follow up on that. On NETSOB's and especially GLOSOB side, Paolo, I see some overlap when it comes to the bioindicators. So I would appreciate if you attended tomorrow's discussion of Working Group
Okay.
1 that George Brown and Carlos Guerra will lead.
Unfortunately, I cannot join, but I think someone else from because I have other conflicting meetings. But
Okay.
I have colleagues that would like to join, partners of benchmarks, and also discussing how our sampling approaches and protocols can be shared widely. So we have in contact with GLOSOB. So
Okay.
we will collaborate for sure, or we will be in
Yes.
contact for sure. Thank you
Sounds
again.
good. Awesome. Thank you, Paolo. Have a good rest of your day. Okay, next we have Dr. Zoe Lindo from Canada, and they are speaking on behalf of the Global Soil Biodiversity Conference. Zoe, if you would like to share your screen, I will add the links to the chat like I did before.
Great.
Yes, you good.
Okay, well, on behalf of the Global Soil Biodiversity Initiative and as co-chair for the local organizing committee, I look forward to welcoming you and our global community to Canada for the 4th Global Soil Biodiversity Conference being held in Victoria, British Columbia from April 12th to 15th, 2026. The Global Soil Biodiversity Initiative was established to promote expert knowledge on soil biodiversity and to link this into environmental policy. The Global Soil Biodiversity Conferences are now considered to be the premier global conference dealing with soil biodiversity. The host city of Victoria is a world-class destination. It's renowned for its mild climate, studying coastal landscapes, and commitment to sustainability. Recently named the #1 best small city in the world by Condé Nast Traveler, Victoria offers a perfect blend of urban charm and natural beauty. It's also my hometown, and I couldn't be more excited to welcome you there. Conference is going to take place at the Victoria Conference Center, which is biosphere certified and carbon neutral and can accommodate and host up to 2,000 delegates. The conference center is located in the heart of downtown Victoria. It's across from the Inner Harbor, and it's surrounded by shops, restaurants, hotels, museums, and green spaces, all within a 5-minute walk. We have an exceptional lineup of 3 keynote speakers who are going to deliver cutting-edge insights on soil biodiversity research. And in addition to these keynotes, we anticipate hosting 500 oral presentations, 200 posters, and 15 special symposia, including sessions highlighting the work of early career researchers. Our call for symposia is now out. We encourage you to submit proposals by the end of March. Regular abstract submissions will open on March 15th with 25 topics across 7 themes to choose from. Notifications of acceptance for talks and posters will start going out in May, just in time for registration that will open this June. You can sign up for announcements through our webpage or by joining the GSBI and watching out for their monthly newsletters. One of the most valuable aspects of this conference is going to be the opportunity to connect with peers, mentors, collaborators from around the world. We're excited to offer dedicated networking events, including informal social gatherings, sessions for early career researchers, and a gala dinner. We're also planning a variety of organized day trips and tours that will let you experience the incredible biodiversity and beauty of the Canadian West Coast. This is going to include bike riding tour, whale watching, and a hike on a popular Gulf island. We hope that you are planning on joining us. Many countries do not need a visa to visit Canada. And for those of you who do, you will be able to request an official letter of invitation upon your registration to the conference. There's more information on the website to help you get started planning. If you'd like to be a sponsor, a supporter, or an exhibitor for our conference, you can also register for a variety of sponsorship opportunities also available on our website. So following the success of the first 3 Global Soil Biodiversity Conferences, the Canadian Organizing Committee is dedicated to making the GSB 2026 a productive, functional, inclusive, and fun event. And we really look forward to seeing you in Victoria, in Canada, in 2026. Thank you.
Thank you. Zoe, does anyone have any questions regarding the conference? Okay. If you do have more questions, please put them in the chat. Zoe and I are the co-chairs of the conference, so you can also please contact either of us if you have any questions. Okay. Thank you, Zoe.
Thanks, Carlos.
Next, we have Dr. Brajesh Singh again, the chair of NETSOB, to close our session for the day. You're muted, Braj. Still?
Yes, now. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. On the behalf of the NETSOB team, I would like to thank you, all of you, very much for your time, engagement, and constructive comments through the chats. A special thanks to all our speakers. They find their times from their busy schedules and comes and share their expertise, enthusiasms, and the projects. Before I close today's work, I would like to recognize and I guess contributions from few people who has made this possible today. I will start with the first persons that is no more with us today, Professor Diana Wall, who sadly passed away in March, in last year, some point of time. Diana was the mother of a lot of things we are doing today. She has been the instrumental for the soil biodiversity and inclusion of soil biodiversity in conservations and other policies. And many of us, including I always count myself that without her supports, guidance, and mentoring, I would not be working in any of these policy frameworks that I have been working. It is her untiring efforts and times that leads many of us to come and join the policy, sort of bringing soil and biodiversity in the policy framework. She has started works a lot before than I can remember at least, but my engagement with her has been since the establishment of Global Soil Biodiversity Initiatives, through which she was instrumental, again, the key persons behind the productions of the Global Atlas for the Soil Diversity, which I mentioned, in my own opinion, is the start of the policy, the stronger policy framework on the soil biodiversity. The other persons we should also remember today is Professor Peter D. Reuters. He's our immediate past president, who was the foundational chair of the NETSOB. So he looks after the establishments and all the early works done with. And thanks also to all the vice chairs. Some of them are returning back, some of this was leaving, and alternates that has developed the first 2 years of the NETSOBs and the framework we are talking today, and we will keep talking going forwards. With that, I just want to say one last thing. The responsibility to take the soil biodiversity policy frameworks, both in the monitoring, management, and conservations, lies with all of us. And we need to work as a team. We need to work as a multi-stakeholders in a format and dialogues in such a way that we develop the data, the policy documents that are relevant to the different scales. We have talked about how the scales policy needs to vary with the scales of the local, national, and government scales. So this is a responsibility of all of us to work together to make sure this is success. With that, I look forward to your continuous engagements, and I look forward to welcoming you again tomorrow morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, for tomorrow's sessions. And with that, I close today's meeting. So thank you very much again for all of you for your participation.
Thank you, Braj. Okay, so today was basically opening remarks, some short updates on our side, and initiatives by partners. Tomorrow, we'll focus on working group activities, some updates on what they have been working in the past 2 years, and the floor will be open more often for discussion. So I would like to see everyone there. Thank you so much and have a good day.